Awesome. So super excited to be here with Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic. We have a really awesome partnership that we're going to talk about. Thanks for taking time. I wanted to ask you a little bit. You've talked a lot about your vision of the future for AI. You wrote Machines of Loving Grace. I thought if you could just a little bit summarize, what's your vision of the future for AI?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. In terms of the future of AI, yeah, I wrote this essay a few months ago called "Machines of Loving Grace," and it was actually motivated by a bit of frustration where when people talked about the upsides of AI, I felt like they weren't being imaginative or specific enough. Lots of people were like, "Yay, this is exciting! Let's do this." There's all kinds of "let's go." But when you actually get into the specifics, I think the potential is incredible. So some of the things I wrote about, and it was colored a bit by the fact that I have been a biologist in the past. So I think of biomedical innovations as one of the areas where you can make the greatest progress. So I just went through the various areas of physical and mental health, and a lot of the diseases that we face now are really complex diseases of complexity. And I think AI is really going to help us to cure those diseases. When I think of all the data, all the questions that say a pharmaceutical company has, I think there's really a potential for AI to address these issues. That's not to say that it won't do amazing things throughout the economy. If we look through the list of companies that we're working with or are going to work with in our partnership, I think it's going to be applied across the economy. But I think it's going to be an incredible change to society beyond even that, where humanity gets healthier and much greater in its capacity to address problems that have plagued us for centuries.
That's super exciting. Looking forward to that future. What's your estimate? How far out is that?
I mean, it's all very uncertain. I think the thing about AI is it's moving very fast, but there's no fundamental reason that it couldn't just stop. So, my guess really is that the fundamental technology is going to be there in the next few years, maybe even next couple years. And there's a question of, how quick is it to get those ideas and that technology out to society where it really produces all the benefits. And that honestly is going to come down to, enterprise and go-to-market partnerships like the ones we have, getting the parts of the economy that in some cases are far away from, this innovation to catch up to it and apply it to their areas of the world.
Yeah, so we have to get all these enterprises to build on that AI, leverage it in each of their industries, and then they have to get also their customers to use it day to day, adopt it, and then have the impact that it has in society. So it might take a little bit of time for all of those things to happen, but hopefully we can accelerate it.
Accelerate as much as possible. Yes.
Yeah. So how important is data in this, for these enterprises? Yeah.
So data is super important, right? There's different kinds of data. So there's the data we use to train the models, and that is obviously very important for making the base model. But then we get to data that is specific to particular industry or a particular company or customer, and I think that's super important as well. There's a lot of stuff. Again, if we go to our example of pharma companies, but it's just as true of finance. It's just as true of tech companies and productivity software. They have a lot of proprietary data where there's information that's simply not contained anywhere else, right? The model can't know facts that it doesn't have access to. And so I think it's important in a number of ways. Sometimes you'll want to fine tune on the data. Sometimes you'll want the model to be able to act and operate on the data. And sometimes you'll want to pull the data into context, as is done with methods like RAG. Sometimes you'll want to have agents that operate on the data. So there's a whole bunch of different ways in which that data will really be essential. And I think it'll be essential for building unique value between the AI companies like us and the enterprises which have that data, right? That's a way to build unique value that isn't substitutable on either side. And I think a lot of what our partnership is about is kind of helping to bring those two things together more efficiently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in the future, if we're gonna have this much impact with AI, how important is it for organizations to have data? Like, how much should they, as they want to sort of prepare themselves for the future, they want to build innovations that can sustain them. how should they be thinking about data themselves?
Yeah, again, I think it's just absolutely essential, right? As the AI models get better at just about everything, I think that data represents, collected knowledge and wisdom from the company that, one of the main things that is going to be synergistic with what the AI models are capable of doing. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you don't know anything and you don't have access to the world. There's only so much you can do. Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely critical.
Yeah, totally. So, I see a lot of use cases that enterprises are doing, and they want to do so much with AI. But the ones that I think are the most interesting are where they have some special data that's unique to their customers that they've been collecting. That's going to be really valuable, and that's, I think, what protects them. And that's where they should do the innovation. They should use the models that you guys provide together with their data, and then come up with those innovations. I think that's where they're going to have this impact. You mentioned a bunch of things. You mentioned RAG. You mentioned agents. I'm curious, what's the future of agents? What's that going to look like? And how can we get these agents to operate on this enterprise proprietary data that they have in Databricks?
Yeah, I mean, my view is the future of AI mostly is agents. So we are increasingly going to have our models operate as agents, right? We've already released some early agents. There was computer use late last year, where the models can take in screenshots from a computer and take actions. We recently released Claude Code, which is an early agent that performs code. And of course, a lot of the models we make via API can just be linked up as and taught to operate as agents. So as the models get smarter and we build more of these specialized things, I think agents are going to be much more of a thing. Agents are going to use tools, and one of the tools they use can be thought of as accessing data in various ways, accessing data through databases, accessing data through various kinds of search. And I think there's going to be a lot of synergy in our partnership with that.
Yeah, super excited. And in particular, I know we have customers that are looking at us both together. AT&T is kind of exciting because they have, I think, 180 million subscribers on their wireless systems, and they're using us to detect fraud. So, that's an exciting use case.
That's a very exciting use case.
Another really awesome use case is Square, or the company called Block. And they used to have these UI interfaces where you had to configure how you want to set up your store and what you're buying. And now with generative AI, they can just configure it all. You can just speak to the thing, and it can just set itself up, and it makes it so much easier for their customers. So excited about all these use cases that we're going to see. So about this partnership, I'm super excited to natively let our customers access Claude's models inside Databricks. Of course, governance, security is super important for them, so they'll be using Unity Catalog and securing it. But I'm curious, what do you think customers are saying about this and using us together?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're hearing, and probably you're hearing it as well, is that there's this incredible convenience to having everything all in one place, right? So the idea is, you have these models and you have your data. And customers face this in a whole bunch of ways. They might be on a different cloud, or just these things are stored in a different way. And the idea that there's not one boundary where the data, the models that go into the data are all kind of contained within the boundary. It's just a huge headache to have to manage that. And so, I think what you guys are doing is making it easier to take our model and fit it in with the other ingredients that are present, and make everything run within this data boundary. So, I think that's a huge benefit for folks.
Yeah, super excited to make that super seamless and simple, going between the data and iterating. Because if you want to improve the quality, make the agents reason on that data, you probably want to iterate through that. So that inner dev loop.
It's the iteration loop, right? Right. It's the dev loop time. Every developer knows that they get that iteration loop time down, and lots of things happen faster.
Exactly. Yep. So super excited about that. So you guys just released Sonnet 3.7, Claude Code, and lots of other innovations. Can you tell us a little bit about these?
Yes. So Sonnet 3.7, we released it. I think as of time of release, it'll have been about 2 months since we released it. The response has really been incredible. Both Sonnet 3.5 and the retroactively named Sonnet 3.6, represented a significant step up in coding, and Sonnet 3.7 represented another significant step up. But we felt like with this step, the model had passed a certain threshold where it was able to do certain coding tasks end to end or on its own that was greater than what was possible before. And so we saw with both with a wide range of customers and with Claude Code, which I'll get to, we saw huge upticks in usage as well as new use cases that hadn't been present before. It even led to the coining of this term by, I believe it was Andrej Karpathy, called vibe coding, which is you just talk to the model and you let it code. So instead of having to be precise, you give the vibes. And I think there are still a number of imperfections to that, and there's a large amount of improvement. But I think the curve from this point onward is going to be pretty fast, and people are going to be surprised at the power of the models that will come out soon.
Yeah, and we're seeing it, right? So tell us a little bit about Code.
Yeah, Claude Code. So Claude Code is basically a particular way to use Claude 3.7 Sonnet. So it kind of goes back to the retro era of command line tools. So the idea is that it's kind of a command line tool that it's easy to integrate with things like Git. And you just say, I'm going to talk to Claude and basically ask it to like write my PR and take these various actions. And it can just act. I mean, it'll ask for your permission to actually take action on the computer, but it'll just act for you. And so you can think of it as a very early agent. And again, the interface is pretty simple, but we found very quickly, within a few days of releasing Claude Code, we had nearly 100,000 people try. We had nearly 100,000 people trying it out, and it's really been adopted. We've talked to enterprises who want to use it, so it really shows the power both of coding models and of agents.
Yeah, it's super, super exciting. Yeah, we have these in Databricks as well. And it's kind of changed how people use Databricks these days. They no longer have to write the code themselves. It's just an essential part. I mean, these days I leverage the assistant heavily for everything. And, it's things like Cursor, Codium, and so on. I think a lot of these use Anthropic behind the hood.
Most of them do. So we have these, and alongside, I think complementary to them, we have now Claude Code. So there's probably 10 of these. There's probably 10 of these startups, and some of them are bigger than others, but all of them are showing explosive growth.
It'll be exciting years ahead here.
It's an exciting time.
MCP, so Model Context Protocol, seems like a very exciting way. I mean, these models need to be able to get their context. They need to get data. They need to be able to get functions, prompts from elsewhere. What's the thinking behind it, and what's the adoption?
Yeah,
and where's it headed?
We felt like there was kind of I don't know, like a missing link or a missing widget between the models themselves and kind of common things that they need to do, right? The models need to somehow integrate themselves into some tool. They need to use some tool. They need to access some data. This is one of these things that's, it's repetitive, but it's never quite the same twice, right? It's spiritually the same, but literally it's always something different. And so we thought, well, isn't that a good problem for for Claude itself? And so MCP is kind of this glue that connects the model to things that the model needs to access and use, like this data or these tools. It was really kind of interesting. We released MCP a few months ago, and many people saw it right away and loved it. But I would say just in the last few weeks, it's for reasons that are actually not entirely clear to us why it happened exactly now. It's kind of exploded in interest and almost become like a meme on social media. So this is pretty interesting, and I think speaks to the utility that people have found from it.
Yeah, we're certainly adopting it and exposing all the information that's in Databricks to the LLMs using MCP. So it's exciting, and it's also cool that you guys open sourced it. I mean, you could have just had it be an Anthropic thing.
Yeah, we thought of it as a little bit like USB-C or something, like a kind of a kind of connector for the AI age, right? A kind of flexible, moldable glue. So I think it's gonna play an important part in our partnership because it brings together the stuff that we do with the stuff that you do. So I think it'll definitely be valuable, and we hope it's widely adopted across the industry.
Yep, I'm sure it will be. Curious about switching gears to governance and security and privacy, which is something both of our companies care a lot about. We've discussed it so much to get this partnership going. What are you hearing from the customers around governance?
Yeah, I mean, data governance, data security, data privacy is particularly important, especially in regulated industries. So all the biomedical wonders that we talked about at the beginning, I think, in order to actually get the models developing drugs and using proprietary data and analyzing clinical trials, obviously it's a big challenge to get the intellectual capability of the models to where they can help. But as with many things in both business and engineering, often the things that hold you up are, the things that to a technologist seem kind of dumb, but that are very important from a business perspective, which is, can we make sure that this data doesn't leak? Can we make sure that we're complying with all the necessary regulations? And often the technical problems, as hard as they seem, we'll solve them, and then but if we don't address these seemingly dumb problems, they can be the thing that holds us up for years, and therefore holds up these benefits and cures to diseases for years. And so I think getting these things right, governing the data in the right way, I think is really important. And as you said, that's something that both of our companies share. And I think you know, there's two parts to this. One is like just the technical part, the technical solutions, but there's another part to it, which is just that our customers have to trust us.
Yes.
They have to trust that we're doing the right thing and that we can be trusted with their data. And I think both of our companies are companies that have cultivated a reputation of trustworthiness. And I'm excited for us to together, two companies with this reputation, present not just a product offering, but a combination that people can trust.
Yeah, super excited about that. And actually, you said it, us as technologists, we might not be thinking about it. I certainly didn't think I'm starting a company that's going to focus on governance. But a few years ago, we launched this thing called Unity Catalog that helps you do governance. It's now become the number one thing we do. I mean, it's like our number one R&D priority. It's where most of the headcount goes. So who would have known? But I think sort of anything you do with data, seems the other side of it is privacy and governance. So in a way, yeah, we're a privacy and security company too. So it's interesting. I want to take a second and ask you about some of the interesting topics that are out there. You've been asked about these before.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Open models versus closed models. There's the never-ending question around these. What's the future going to be? Which one's going to win? Which one are we going to have? Which one's going to go away?
Yeah, so I think from both a business perspective and a safety and security perspective, I've always seen the open versus closed distinction as a little bit overblown. I think today's models don't have the kinds of risks that I've been worried about. Although I think those risks are coming quickly, and I think in that world, there's flourishing ecosystem of closed models, open models. I think they're all good for the world. They all advance science and the industry in different ways. As we get to more powerful models, then again, I think these risks will be present. These kind of national security risks that we often worry about. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's open or closed models. It's that the models are very powerful, and therefore we have to contend with these risks one way or another. Perhaps the way we need to contend with them is a little different for open models versus closed models, but I've never really seen that as the most important factor. The most important factor is just that the field is advancing very quickly and has many benefits. It has some risks, and we need to deal with those risks.
So we'll have open source models, right?
I think there will continue to be in different parts of the market and at different capabilities, both kinds of models. Yeah.
A question: if we're going to have open source models, I mean, if they're going to exist, someone's going to put them out, like DeepSeek and so on. Then probably we're better off if at least those models are developed here.
All things equal, I think that's probably correct. Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, reasoning models. That's like the focus. Actually, how much are you released reasoning model or reasoning capabilities into Claude? How much of that is a focus for you versus classic pre-training scaling laws?
Yeah, I mean, I think both are a focus for us. We're seeing that reasoning models are are showing strong returns to the scaling laws, but also ordinary pre-training continues to scale up in a promising way for us. So we're really seeing both at once. Uh, um, our take on reasoning models in particular, I mean, we've I think embodied a little bit of this, like with reasoning models in particular, not first to market, but we think we've done it right. Where this idea of reasoning models being this kind of separate thing, where sometimes you call the reasoning model, sometimes you call the non-reasoning model, and you called the reasoning model for an easy problem, and oops, it took 20 minutes thinking, but you didn't need to because it could have answered in 2 seconds. I think that's a little awkward and not kind of the right way to do it. So we've introduced what we've called hybrid reasoning models, which are models that you can basically tell them how long to think. You can turn reasoning on and off for the same model, the same set of weights. It's just like humans. I don't have like one brain that I use for easy questions and like another brain that I use for hard questions. I just have one brain, and I think about how carefully I need to answer a given question.
Yeah. How much time do I get to answer this next question?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm curious. What about scaling laws for reasoning models? Are they different?
Yeah.
How much do we know about them? Is it too early to say?
The general dynamic we've seen with scaling laws is that exactly what is being what is being scaled, changes a little bit from time to time. We have little bit of changes to the transformer architecture. The reasoning models are like a slightly different type of training, but they're basically the same thing. We used to do RL from human feedback. We still do this kind of reasoning training. It's just RL with a slightly different objective. So we're always scaling, but the thing we're scaling changes a little. And now, as we've seen at times before, often we're scaling more than one thing at a time and stacking them on top of each other. So with small changes, the scaling laws are kind of undefeated. They continue.
Yeah. What about generalization? It seemed on the pre-training side, when you got the new model out, it was just better across the board on so many different tasks. On reasoning models, does it generalize as well as the sort of pre-training did, or is it different?
Yeah, it kind of depends what you scale. One of the things we said when we released Claude Sonnet 3.7 is, we were less interested in these math and coding competitions, which a lot of people use to judge via benchmarks. One of the reasons is that those are pretty narrow and specialized tasks, and they don't generalize that much. We focused on some more broader tasks and found that while the generalization is not perfect, that leads to better generalization than we've seen in the math contest. So that is again another area where we were not first to market, but we think we've produced the best thing.
Thank you so much, Dario, for taking time, spending so much energy jointly on this partnership. We're very excited about it. If you want to use the Claude models, you can now use them in our model serving, in our agent framework, in vector search, RAG. So super excited about this.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about the partnership.